So today I thought I'd just do a little bit of talking while I'm crafting. So today I thought I'd do a little bit of talking while I'm crafting my little new project. Um, you have to forgive my hands, they have a little bit of paint. I was actually making a picture frame from cardboard and I just finished painting it, and it still needs a bit of work. It needs a stand, something to help it stand in the back, but I thought it looks pretty cute. And this is just a flyer for an ad, but that's what I was working on. And then I'm still working on a pillow cushion cover. This is recycled. It was a pillow cover that was being sold at Goodwill for $1.50. I didn't like what the cover looked like, so I decided to use it as a platform, as a base to create new pillow covers. And of course, this black fabric here is a recycled t-shirt, and the yarn that I'm using here is recycled. I got an old sweater and I unraveled it, and I got quite a lot of yarn which I'm using as embroidery thread. And of course the yarn holder here is also recycled paper. So anyway, today I thought I'd talk a little bit about just being happy, finding joy. And I was just thinking about how, we are often told that joy is waiting for us, you know. Joy is waiting for you when you get a new job, when you get a new paycheck, or when you get your next achievement. So it's always somewhere around the corner. But really, when you think about it, joy is not really a reward. It should be an ongoing experience. It should be an everyday thing. But how can it be an everyday thing with everything that's going on in the world, with everything that goes on with everyday life? And maybe I should say a little bit about the stitch I'm doing here. I believe this is called seeding. It's just like a back stitch, and you do the stitches every which way, and they look like little pebbles of rice. I had started off filling this part here with squares, but I didn't like how they look. And then I thought about doing like a stem stitch. I didn't like how that looked either. So I'm going to trying out this seeding to see what it's going to come out as. So back to joy. If you're someone who's religious, they tell you joy is going to be found in the afterlife. If you're someone who's ambitious, you're thinking of joy being your next achievement, making more money. And in reality, what you find that is that if you look at joy as a reward system, you will continuously be chasing after it. And it ends up being like a shifting goalpost. When you're in a race and there's no finish line, it ends up feeling like that. I feel that joy doesn't have to be a reward. I think joy can start in small things. And the first thing is to really find what is that one thing that makes you lose track of time. The one thing you can do for hours and hours and you totally lose track of time, you're in a rhythm, you're in a process that is just relaxing. And it takes you away from your everyday life. It's like you're in a magic world. What is that one thing? For some people, it can be reading a book. For some people, it can be losing yourself in a long jog or run. For others, it can be sewing. For people like my grandmother, it was really weaving a basket. The idea is finding that one thing that makes you lose track of time, makes you feel most like yourself, and something that leaves you filled up, not just entertained. It might not entertain you, but it leaves you feeling full. It can be cooking, it can be talking to a friend. But remember, the idea is that it might not necessarily leave you entertained, but it will leave you with a joyful feeling, a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. So the next question is, does finding joy, or finding that one thing always have to involve having lots of money? The truth is, joy doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything. And in reality, the most sustainable kind of joy usually doesn't cost you anything. Taking a trip to Mombasa is fun. Taking a trip to Singapore is fun. But you can only take so many trips, especially if you don't have the finances. How about finding joy in little things? Swap Netflix for a day out. Trade expensive meals for cooking something new at home. Find free events. Or find maybe an activity like this one I'm doing right here, where I had an old t-shirt, I had some yarn, and I'm sewing. Doing this, I can do this all day. Like seriously, frankly, I can do this all day. And the funny thing is that it doesn't even have to be a project that I complete. It's really about finding joy in that particular moment. I'm doing this. It makes me feel at peace. It brings me immense joy. It is almost meditative. The issue is not so much whether I finish the pillowcase or not. The issue is not whether it's pretty or not. The issue is, how is it making me feel right this moment? I was telling a friend of mine the other day that when I start some of these little projects, I don't even undo the stitches. If I make a mistake, I just leave it there. Because it's in the creating, not so much in the finished project itself. So the idea really is to let joy be creative and not costly. Those trips to Dubai that everyone is taking, hey, if you have the money to do it and it's going to bring you joy, do it. If it's something that is going to become a challenge or a chore, in the pursuit of that happiness, you're having to work extra jobs just to find that money to go to Dubai, you're having to take a loan, which is going to be a future burden to go to Dubai, then it's not joy, it becomes a chore. Joy and activities that involve joy are not just about checking off something off your bucket list. Joy isn't forced. It's not something that is forced. It's not something that you're doing so that the others can see or give you praise. It's invited. Joy is about creating really a rhythm, not a rigid routine. Setting a time aside each week, each day, even just 15 minutes to find something joyful. I find that sometimes life becomes a drug. When I say drug, I mean D-R-A-G, a drug. You do the same thing every day. You wake up, go to work, come back, make dinner, go to the gym, come back, go to sleep, wake up, go to work. And every once in a while, life just feels like one big monotonous cycle that just isn't worth it. how do you break that cycle? We still need to do the things we have to do every day to make a living and to be able to sustain a life. Not all of us can live off the grid on beautiful farms without, growing our own crops and not dependent on the industrial machinery to survive. But even when you're in that economic tunnel, being someone who has to probably to go to work 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, how do you find joy? And this is really what I'm talking about. So once you find that one thing that brings you joy, how do you stay the course? How do you make sure you don't fall off the wagon? And how do you sustain that? And one of the ways you do that is, number one, like I said, making sure that the things that you do to find you joy are not expensive, and being able to achieve that joy is not costly. It doesn't become another source of stress. I need 100,000 or I need 200,000 to make a trip to Dubai, and you don't have the money for it. So joy is really peace. Joy is not the kind of thing that comes from going out every night. Joy is not the kind of thing that comes from buying a huge car. A huge car is going to give you momentary happiness, but joy is lasting. Well, my yarn is finished here, so I have to thread this. Just give me a second. And I'm actually using dental floss to get this in there. I'm very excited about this, being able to recycle this yarn from this sweater. So as I was saying, joy is really knowing you are enough. I've been around a long time now, and it's beginning to hit me that all the things I thought would bring me joy and happiness really did not. I spent most of my entire life thinking, when I make X amount of money, I will be very, very happy. I made X amount of money, and I was still the same person. I thought, when I become extremely fit, because I love fitness, I'll be extremely happy. Until I realized trying to maintain a 5 or 10% body fat is pretty miserable. It's kind of hard to do it every day of the year. So maybe my fitness should be just about being healthy, exercising for my enjoyment, and staying moderately fit. So joy is really just about realizing that you are enough. Even now, you are enough. Joy is not about really accepting your suffering, but again, finding those little things every single day. Joy could be just growing a plant, watching it grow. And that's the hardest thing, finding what really brings you joy, finding what brings you peace, finding what makes you feel whole. And in the midst of everything that's going on, everything else that's going on in the world, and everything else that's going on in your everyday life. I think what I'm trying to say is that joy is not something that we wait for. It's not something that's going to come when you have money. It's not something that's going to come when you have a new car. Sometimes we notice joy, sometimes we don't, because we are too engrossed in our everyday life that even when we have fleeting joy, we don't notice it. So joy is something we nurture. First, you identify it, you find ways to achieve it or to get close to achieving it. You find ways to sustain it. You make time for it. Realize that you don't have to escape your life to find joy, because sometimes you really can't. You just have to learn to see joy every single day. So, do I have answers? No, I really don't. This is just a musing about life and how sometimes you go through life almost joyless, and being able to know how and where you can find joy. So, this is one of my ways of finding joy. I love to craft, just make random things. I like to make videos. They are not the greatest videos. I'm not very consistent, but just doing the videos and editing them and creating stuff brings me joy. I have immense joy. I don't always finish my projects. Some are ongoing, some are just momentary fads. Here's a beautiful doll that I made that is not finished. I thought, I would try out doll making. Had an old t-shirt, had some stuffing from an old pillow. I made this little lady. I think she turned out pretty well. She even has a little booty there. She's got her joints. She's got her pretty little fingers. Let's see if you can see that. I did a lot of work on the eyes, just trying to be able to get it right. I still haven't figured out how to make the nose. Then I crocheted her a little dress and crocheted her some stockings. I had so much fun doing this. Is it finished? No. Is it the best doll there is in the world? No. But really, this little project fulfilled its purpose. It gave me immense joy. And really, I feel that's what it's all about. Doing things that you love and taking the time to find that one thing that brings you joy. So thanks for being here. This was just a musings video. I'm still working on the pillowcase. There'll be a video in the near future with all the pillowcases that I'm making. And remember, you don't have to escape life to love it. You just have to learn to see it again and learn to find things that bring you joy. So I'll see you next time at Cheap Fun Crafting. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep crafting, and I hope you find joy. Till next time, bye-bye.